Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. We are going through Jesus' 7 signs, and in a previous video, we went over Jesus' third sign, where he healed a paralyzed man on the Sabbath. In case you missed it, I'll leave a link for you to watch. Today, we're going to go over Jesus' fourth sign. Jesus' fourth sign, besides his resurrection, is the only miracle that is recorded in all 4 Gospels. In other words, this miracle is very important and left a burning image in the minds of every Gospel writer. Even though this miracle left a burning image in the minds of the gospel readers, though, most of the people who witnessed this miracle missed the whole point of it. Now, if you don't know what miracle I'm talking about, it's the famous miracle where Jesus feeds thousands of people with bread and fish. But the miracle has little to do with food. It has everything to do with Jesus, and that's what the crowds missed. They thought this miracle proved that Jesus was their welfare king and would give them free food and healthcare forever. But when Jesus began to teach the meaning of this miracle, almost everybody walked away. What went so wrong in this miracle? Well, let's find out. Let me set the stage. Today's miracle connects with the Passover story. The Passover story looks back to the time when God delivered Israel from slavery in Egypt. God parted the Red Sea so that Israel can escape Egypt, and God provided food from heaven called manna so that Israel can have food and live in the wilderness for 40 years. So Jesus will highlight these 2 elements from the Passover story. In today's miracle, he's going to highlight the bread from heaven, or manna. And in the next sign, he will highlight the power God had to split the Red Sea by walking on water. And so with the Passover in mind, let's zoom in and look at this miracle a little closer. Around 6 months has passed since Jesus healed the paralyzed man. For 6 months, Jesus gave his power to his apostles so that they can perform miracles at different towns. During this time, word began to spread that Jesus is this healer. So all sorts of people follow Jesus to get healed. He becomes very popular because he can provide free healthcare for everybody. But then we zoom in closer to this actual day. This is one of the longest days in Jesus' life. This very morning, he found out that one of his best friends, his relative, John the Baptist, has been beheaded. This news floors Jesus, and he just wants to get away and be by himself. But the crowds won't let him. And you want to know how big this crowd became? We see that there were 5,000 men. Now, if you count their wives and children, this means that this crowd could have been as big as 15 or even 20,000 people. This is the size of a sports stadium. So Jesus tells his disciples to follow him in a boat, and they row across the Sea of Galilee to escape the crowds. But the crowd is so desperate that they walk 3 to 4 miles following Jesus' boat. So Jesus decides to stop, and he starts healing and teaching for many hours until the sun is about to set. And the crowd hasn't eaten all day, and they're becoming very hungry. The disciples bring this problem up to Jesus. And so Jesus takes this opportunity to test his disciples. He turns to Philip and asks him where they can find bread. Keep in mind that the disciples have just spent the last 6 months performing miracles by Jesus' power. So Jesus wants to see if they will trust in his power or if they will revert back to their old ways. Philip takes the test and responds this way. 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. Fail! Philip responds by looking at this problem practically. Philip's mental calculator starts working like a cash register, and he figures out that almost a year's worth of salary is not even enough to give everyone a little food. I mean, there aren't any grocery stores, so they can't even find a place that will have food already prepared for them. And even if there was a grocery store around there, they don't have enough money to buy food for all these people. And so they frantically look at what they do have, and they come upon a boy's lunch where he has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Now we need to know that barley loaves is not like the bread that we see in the market today. Barley loaves were actually food for poor people because of its low gluten content, and it was very disgusting and almost inedible. In fact, this bread was usually reserved for animals. And these barley loaves wouldn't have been large loaves. They would have been more like crackers. And also, these fish are not like huge 20-pound salmons. They are actually tiny pickled fish that you will spread on the barley loaves to make it a little more flavorful and edible. So this is all the food they have. 5 crackers with 2 pickled fish covering it? This is an impossible situation. Jesus starts separating the males in groups of 50s and 100s. Now, why did he do this? Because this is exactly what Moses did when he would distribute food. So Jesus is like Moses, splitting people up into groups in order to feed them. But he doesn't have any food to give the crowds. But notice that John says that Jesus just keeps handing out bread after bread and fish after fish. It wasn't as if Jesus supersized the bread to make it as big as a house, and it wasn't as if Jesus has some super sharp knives so that he can cut the bread and fish into 20,000 pieces. No, Jesus creates bread and fish out of nothing. He creates bread that doesn't come from grain from the ground. He creates fish that never had to be caught from the ocean. And this must have tasted so much better than barley loaves. So like Moses, Jesus is providing bread from heaven, but he's doing this by his own power. Now, Jesus keeps handing out bread and fish until everyone is full. And in fact, we see that there are 12 baskets of bread that is left over. Now, why is there 12 baskets? So that each disciple can have a basket of bread for themselves. It's as if Jesus is saying to his disciples, do you know how to pass the test now? Don't forget who I am. I am God, and I could create food out of nothing. So go grab your basket and eat some bread, because I know you're pretty hungry. So we see that the disciples get the point of this miracle, but we see that the crowds missed the point. They saw Jesus as a promised prophet who would deliver them from slavery just like Moses did. They see Jesus' power to provide bread, and their mind immediately goes to gaining political power. They want to make Jesus king and overthrow Rome so they no longer have to be slaves anymore. Just like Moses freed Israel from Egypt, well, they think now that Jesus is going to free them from Rome. So they want to make Jesus their king, start a revolution, overthrow the Roman Empire, but Jesus knew what was in their minds. And knowing that this is what they were thinking, he goes away from the crowd. Now, what was so wrong with this type of thinking? The reason why is that Jesus did not perform this miracle in order to show that he is this new Moses that gives new bread to start a new revolution. Instead, Jesus performs this miracle to show that he is the bread from heaven and that he must be broken for our salvation. Jesus' main focus here is not on political power, because our greatest need is not political freedom. Jesus' focus is not just giving bread, because our greatest need is not to be fed. Jesus' main focus is not on healing people, because our greatest need is not physical health. Jesus' focus is becoming the bread from heaven that gives eternal life, because our greatest need is salvation. Jesus summarizes the meaning of this miracle this way: I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. If you found this video helpful, please like it and share it with a friend. And make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you will know when the next video will come out next Friday. And until next time, see you.